Good afternoon. Welcome to Thought to Action, presented by the London Center for Policy Research, where we delve deeply into important issues, examine ideas, and discuss solutions, and put forth our own thoughts for purposes of taking action. I'm Tony Shaffer, the president of the London Center for Policy Research, and we welcome you to our latest discussion point of the Second Amendment. Today, we're going to be joined by Dr. Steve Halbrook, who is an expert in all things Second Amendment. Steve has been key and critical to a number of cases which have gone to the Supreme Court. And I'll let Steve kind of speak to his own background here in a second. But today we're going to focus on what I believe are key policy issues which may well come up to the Supreme Court in the not too distant future. So Steve, God bless you, and thank you for being here today, and welcome to Thought to Action.
Thank you, Tony. Glad to be on the show. Good to see you again. I have a website, stephenhalbrook.com. Yeah. If you want to know more about me, go right over there. I've written books on the Second Amendment, argued cases in various courts on the topic, and it's just good to be on the show.
Yeah, and I encourage people to go check it out. He's has some great thought pieces regarding what the right should mean to every American, and that's why we're here today. So, Steve, just to get right into it, we believe as a think tank that there's a need to define more clearly two issues that are protected by the Second Amendment. First is the idea that if you are threatened, if you face a credible threat, that you as an individual have the right, the constitutional right, the guaranteed right of self-defense. And unfortunately, in many instances, as we've seen through recent court cases and people being charged, the actual attempt to exercise that right of self-defense has become criminalized. So part of what we're trying to do is what we're calling the minimum response requirement, the MSR. The idea here is that there should be a universal acceptance that any individual, any citizen has that right to defend themselves. So what do you make of this departure from, I would say, a clear-cut requirement that citizens be allowed to protect themselves versus what we see going on regarding the progressive left trying to undermine this as a right?
What we see now is contrary to human nature. If you go back to not just the dawn of civilization, but the dawn of human beings.
Right.
And in fact, this goes with all animal life too. You have a fundamental right of self-defense. It so happens that other animals have natural weapons. The Greek philosophers talked about this. They have claws, they have teeth that can tear, things like that.
Right.
We don't have that, but we do have the opposing movement, and we can make tools.
Yeah.
And so since the earliest times, humans have made tools, including weapons of defense. And when we talk about the Second Amendment, that's a pre-existing right. It was not invented. The right to keep and bear arms was not invented by the founding fathers. They just put it down on paper. Mm-hmm. This is a right that's the first law of nature. If you go back to the philosophical origins of our free society, Aristotle, Cicero, John Locke, people like that, they all recognize that in the first instance, you have a right to defend yourself. And to defend yourself, you really have a right to defend your life, your liberty, and your property.
Right.
And without that ability, there's nothing. There's nothing that, I mean, in terms of just surviving. If somebody else can rob you and take away your property, that's the fruits of your labor.
Right.
And like John Locke emphasized, why should the life of the robber be preferred over the life of the victim?
So how has that been so badly lost to the courts over the decades of all these cases? Because that's an excellent point. Why is the life or the protection of a criminal more important than a law-abiding citizen trying to defend themselves?
Well, I think instead of courts making rulings like that, I think what we're seeing here in this year of 2020, you have a departure from that rule by so-called progressive prosecutors who are charging crime victims instead of the instigators of crime.
Right.
If you look at the laws of every state, you have a right to use non-deadly force to defend yourself from non-deadly use of aggressive use of force, and you have a right to use deadly force if you anticipate that the person is threatening your life, and you reasonably anticipate that, and that you can use deadly force if you're protecting your person or your, let's say, your building from arson or whatever. The legal rules provide all of that, but what we're seeing is that in the case of these cities where riots are taking place, the McCloskey case in St. Louis is an example, or Kenosha, Wisconsin, the Rittenhouse case,
Right.
where you have no attempt to bring to justice the people who are um, causing the arson, the rioting, the looting. You have forfeiture of basic law enforcement, and then you have people trying to defend themselves, defend their very lives even. They're being charged. So, of course, it's not over. What do they say till the fat lady sings or something?
Yeah.
Um, these people are going to have trials. They're going to have jury trials,
Right.
and the prosecutor is going to have to convince the jury that, oh, you should have just taken it. Like in the McCloskey case, yeah, they were making death threats to you, and they were threatening to burn your house down. Well, whatever. You're not supposed to show force. I mean, the McCloskeys were very restrained. All they did was to show they had guns, and dissuaded any kind of action that might have otherwise taken place. We don't know what would have happened, but they were certainly threatened with death.
Well,
So they should have never been charged. But anyway,
that's
these are political prosecutions.
right. So there's two aspects of that as a follow-up. First, technology itself is ambivalent to the user. It cannot be assigned good or bad factors. A gun is a gun. I'm sitting right now within arm's reach of several guns, plus they're in my gun safe. I have no fear a gun is going to jump up and go out of control and start killing people. It won't happen. With that said, the left has assigned all sorts of mystic power to the gun. And
Right.
extending to that, one of the things that I think is a very positive power, which they don't recognize, is exactly what you just said. A show of force without use of a firearm is a very effective deterrent. Why is it we don't accept that or study that more? Because it seems to me that there's a significant number of guns being involved but not used, which have actually been an effective deterrence. Why do we not understand or accept that as a reasonable de-escalation technique, and not brandishing? And there's a difference between brandishing and being prepared to use a gun. They look the same, but the application is very different. Why do we not see more discussion at this point?
Well, what's interesting is that there's different levels of this aspect of the gun. At the first level, we're talking about mere possession. And so the
Yeah.
Second Amendment recognizes the right to keep arms. Just by people keeping arms, you have a deterrent to governmental tyranny, for example. We don't have a tyranny in this country because we have juries, we have suffrage, we have the free press, and we have guns
Yeah.
that are just sitting there doing nothing.
Right.
The rulers know that we have all these ways of citizen empowerment. But at the next level, there's also a right to bear arms. There's a right to carry them. And it doesn't use the word use, but there's no point to keeping or bearing unless you can use.
Precisely.
So it's
Precisely.
implied that you can use guns for justifiable purposes.
Right.
Um, you hear people saying that, oh, somebody was killed by a gun instead of killed by another person. They weren't
Right.
killed by a gun. They were killed by a criminal with a gun. But that's what's turned upside down. The advocacy groups who try to say we want to pass gun safety measures, by which they really mean gun confiscation measures. We want
No
to
doubt.
confiscate guns from law-abiding citizens, and if they were to resist the confiscation, the police would use deadly force against them.
Right.
Or
And
if
that's
they are caught with a gun peacefully, then we want to incarcerate them for 5 years, for example. I mean, look at who are the aggressors in these various schemes of the left is devising.
right.
They want to initiate aggressive force against people who simply want to have guns to defend themselves. But I'll tell you what, the people are talking back by what they're doing. They're voting with their dollars. We have
Mhm.
more gun owners now than in American history, because people are fed up and they're fearful. Once these jurisdictions say that, well, law enforcement stand down, anything goes, what are the people to do?
So that's a great point. And you are aware, and people can go check out our Thought to Action website. We actually did a first time gun owner video in conjunction with
Yes.
Sig Sauer for people to, exercise their right. Like I said, 4 million new gun owners. It's great to understand the basics. We produced a video that I recommend people who are first time gun owners to go over and check out. We're now planning to do a philosophy of use. To your point, Steve, we're now planning a philosophy of use of, okay, you've got the right, you're exercising that right, you're out and about, then thinking through the next step. What does that mean? The implied strong use potential of a gun, that you may use it, which brings me to my last point and last question. Why is it we have lacked the ability to have universal suffrage or franchise regarding that right? Notably, driver's licenses are universally acceptable. You give a Florida driver's license, it works in Maine, it works in New Hampshire, it doesn't matter. But my right, a constitutional right, I can go to New Hampshire and open carry or conceal carry, it doesn't matter. My right is a right, and I've exercised that. But if I decided to do that in New York, exercising a constitutional right, I would be arrested. So, and I know President Trump has said he would sign it if it gets to his desk, which is good but not great, a universal concealed carry reciprocity law. And I think that's necessary, but that doesn't fix the problem. So why is it we have not had the recognition of the same weight given to the Second Amendment we have to the First Amendment regarding a universal franchise of that right?
If you go to the founding, you can see the right to bear arms is a universal right.
That's right.
Before there was a Second Amendment, there was the Pennsylvania Declaration of Rights, the first one in our country, 1776, the right of the people to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state, which was amended to say that the right of citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned, shall not even be questioned. And so at the founding, you had no restrictions on the peaceable bearing of arms.
Right.
And we go through different stages of history. The Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court said, well, if we recognized African Americans as citizens, they could keep and carry arms wherever they went.
Right.
That was recognized for free citizens. It's only when you get basically to different parts of our history, but like with the Sullivan Law in New York in 1911, for example, discretionary issuance of licenses. You can only have a gun if we say you can. You can only carry it if we think you have a need. And we being the government, it's like the Second Amendment's void, or prohibited by law. So what the Second Amendment says, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right.
And yet you go to New Jersey or California and the right is clearly being infringed. So that's the violation of law now. And I think if we could get Congress to pass a law and President Trump to sign a law that basically says, notwithstanding any state law or ordinance to the contrary, it's kind of frivolous to have to do this. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Are we going to say that in a statute when it's already in the Constitution? Well, maybe it'll come to that. Maybe it won't. But one can certainly make out the case. The Second Amendment's been held to apply to the states in the McDonald case from 2010 by the Supreme Court.
Right.
You have a right to bear arms in every state.
Well, I'm hoping will come to a head with Amy Coney Barrett in some instance, with the majority now available to those who I think support this universal franchise concept, as well as the president who said he'll sign this. So we'll have to leave it there for now, Steve. God bless you for being on with me. Thank you for the work you do. I'm like other gun owners, are frustrated by the lack of clarity of how we can best apply this, because right now, as you pointed out, jurisdictions are trying to defund police. It's a fundamentally less safe environment. And most of the places I want to carry, I can't. The places I can easily carry, I have no fear of having to carry. It's really ironic.
Right.
But that's kind of the situation we're in. I could carry West Virginia here, but I can't do it in these big cities, which I think is the most dangerous place. So we'll ask you to come back and join us again some point as we continue to develop these policies. And thank you all for watching and listening to Thought to Action. If you like this program, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'll be doing a number more of these sorts of things. We'll also be doing thought to action to keep everybody informed, and do thought to action Q&As in the near future. Please be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and our website, londoncenter.org. As you can also find our Thought to Action podcast on thoughttoaction.tv and thoughttoactionpodcast.com. So again, I'm Tony Shaffer. Thanks for being with us today, and look forward to talking to you all again very soon.